So, my friends, we are here for another episode of, well, a Star Wars conversation. This is the first episode of Clone Wars Conversations. We are tackling the full first season of the Clone Wars animated show, the 3D animated one that came out between 2008 and 2009, directed primarily by Dave Filoni, and a lot of it written by George Lucas. Which explains quite a lot of elements of this show, including the chronological order, which I'll get into later because it's a headache of trying to work that out. But we watched the Clone Wars animated movie a month or so ago. We obviously watched Rebels Review. We watched Star Wars Rebels and did a whole show on that. And now we're tackling the Clone Wars, which I have seen all the way through twice, I think, before. And Megan's only seen once before, but she'll be coming in and out intermittently throughout the series. In this episode, she's only going to be here for the start because she's had a 13-hour workday, so she needs to rest. But I've seen it all twice before. Dave has seen it once before, but Maff is new. Maff has never seen it. But for this episode only, Megan has actually only seen 5 or 6 episodes of this before we did this.
Yep.
Good stuff.
Excuse me. We skipped a few of season 1, didn't we?
Yes. So before I ask Dave and Maff what they thought of this, what did you think of season 1? And when we first watched the Clone Wars, after how much you disliked the movie when I first showed that to you, what did you think of season 1 this time compared to when you last watched it?
I honestly couldn't tell you what I thought of it the first time because I don't really remember.
Because I skipped all the Jar Jar bits.
Yeah, all the blah blah bits. But watching it this time round and where I see it go, the animation is really off-putting at points. There's the arc with the Twi'leks, and the Twi'leks in particular. There's one Twi'lek child, and her face is fucking creepy. The animation definitely gets better throughout the series. So it did take me by surprise a little bit because I was like, oh, right, okay. I forgot that this is where it started. Obviously it's the same in the film, but when I think of Ahsoka, I don't think of
janky
animated Ahsoka.
Yeah, you think of season 7, amazing animation Ahsoka.
Yeah.
Hyper detailed.
But yeah, I thought it was alright. There were a couple of episodes that I thought were a bit naff, but as a whole, I didn't really hate any of them.
When we first watched it, I specifically only cherry-picked episodes from this because I thought the whole season of this would put you off because I am Jack's Musings. He's seen all of Star Wars Rebels. He's not got through season 1 of Star Wars Clone Wars. Numerous ones of my friends, back when they cared about Star Wars loosely, they were like, oh, should I watch the Clone Wars? And I'm always like, yes and no. That's why I always recommend Rebels. So I'm like, look, Rebels season 1, it's pretty good, but you can see where it's going, it gets better, and there's things that grab you. Season 1 of the Clone Wars, I find that if you're not really into Star Wars, you'll just be lost. As in, it will lose you because you're just watching lots of these episodes and you're like, What relevance does this have to anything? Where does this go?
Yeah, there's no real consistency with when the timeline is.
Well, it's not just that, but it's also there's so many episodes which are completely inconsequential, which I'm sure we'll delve into because there's lots of them. But Dave, what did you think of Clone Wars Season 1 on your... This is your only rewatch, isn't it? Because you've only seen it once before.
Yeah, so... I made the mistake. So I watched this in that period between Christmas and New Year. And so I just thought, right, blast it. So box it off. And then you guys posted in the chat last week and it's like, oh shit, you know what? I don't remember anything. I mean, literally nothing. So I've been slightly binging again to be consistent with my usual last minute scramble, I guess. I'd echo what Megan said. I mean, some of the animation's really jarring. I mean, that first episode when you have Yoda, and he just looks terrible in that ambush episode. Honestly, really, really bad. And I do think a lot of the season is kind of easy watching, isn't it? But you get to the end of a few episodes, and you're like, yeah, did much happen there of consequence? Not really. So I thought, yeah, on rewatch, it was easy watching. The other thing I'd say is you do almost, even though everything's kind of in continuity, the characters are different from their real life personas, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like Anakin, for me, is so much more likable and relatable in this one. Whereas in the films, he's just like, "Well, I can't do it.
Yeah,
Make me a
he's a
master."
whiny little bitch.
He absolutely is. And Obi-Wan's a bit more sort of cheeky, isn't he? You know, with
Sassy.
the
Yeah, he's
I love sassy
sassy.
Obi-Wan. I
Yeah,
love sassy Obi-Wan.
I wasn't thinking that word, but now that you said it, yeah, sassy probably is that. And although I wasn't impressed with him, he said at one point like where they think they've lost R2, and he's like, "Ah, droids a dime a dozen or something." Like, hey. But yeah, no, kind of enjoyed it, but I think for me this season is one for the completionists. It's not really mandatory watching at all.
No, I think there's only really 6 to 8 episodes that I'd say you have to watch, or have to in air quotes. To be honest, you could skip, in my opinion, this entire season bar 3 episodes, and it wouldn't make a difference.
So I'm curious, which ones do you think are the ones that should be watched?
That is going to be a topic of discussion.
Okay.
Slightly later, because we're going to go through loosely each of the episodes. But we'll each go for our top episodes and those sort of things. Then we get into the minutiae. I'll release Megan from her chains. But Maff, fresh-faced young Maff. What in the realm of Star Wars? What did you think of this whole season? How do you think compared to the movie? And as you're in the Star Wars phase that I think I was in about a decade ago, where I was like, oh, there's all these cool things, all these comics I'm reading that are great, and I'm getting into this new content and stuff. Rather than me, I'm like an old man, like I've consumed it all.
I think that's where I'm quite lucky. The fact that I'm coming in and I'm still into the Star Wars hype at the moment. I'm wanting a bit more of it, and this is kind of working for me. And considering that a lot of what I've read is this is one of the worst ones, and it gets better as it goes along.
By far,
I still really enjoyed it. The animation, I will agree. In Rebels, they seemed like the faces were kind of stretched up a bit. In this, it's all blocking, and it's just every now and again, it's like Ahsoka looks like out of Minecraft.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
And Anakin still has that kind of chiseled jaw and that, but Ahsoka looks like she's out of place at times. And I get it. She's a young Padwin, so she's a young girl at this point. But I don't know. She seems out of place compared to everybody else at times. I do like her. I think she's got a very good story arc in this. But she does sometimes at points kind of feel a bit out of place. And she looks out of place as well. Now, you have said that the animation gets better as it goes along. But there was just, every now and again, you were just kind of thinking, oof. It's like, I think in Rebels, there was one of the episodes where the lightsabers just weren't quite right.
They're very thin, aren't they, in Rebels?
Yeah. And that this, as I say, just every now and again there were just certain little things you just thought, something's not right there, and it kind of pulled you out of what you was enjoying. The one thing that I love every episode, the start of the episode, is the announcer.
I was doing an impression of that earlier.
I just love it. I just, it's like Obi-Wan is out fighting the Separatists, and that it kind of gave you a quick update of what's going on. I get the episodes are a bit kind of, here's one, here's another one, here's another one. But it fills it in, that couple of little lines that the announcer does, fills you into it, and then you're straight into the episode. And it doesn't need to follow on to a certain degree. I've enjoyed that bit. Each start of the episode where you can skip, the recap. I make sure I listen to it and see what's going on, and then it kind of gets you straight in there.
That's a good point, yeah, because the announcer is Tom Kane, who also voices Yoda in this series, and he does a lot of other little things. But it's one of those things that I found, I don't personally like it very much, because I only want a recap on a show like Game of Thrones, where there's about 1 billion things going on. But because this was aired on TV, when I first watched it, when I caught glimpses of it, the beauty of it is because every episode recaps the prior episode if it's in a story arc. But if it's not, it just tells you kind of loosely what's going on. So every episode feels like it may or may not have a prequel to it, which that element I think it was very, very clever. And it is that kind of thing of like, on the separatist world of da-da-da-da, Obi-Wan Kenobi goes across and he fights General Grievous. But what would our heroes do next? And it makes me think of like World War One or World War Two, like the announcers over the radio, our boys in blue and red going across the ocean to fight the commies. I mean, that's the wrong war, but you know what I mean. Wrong war by like
mixing it up here.
Yeah, I'm doing the Cold War, Cold War mixing with the Vietnam War in the voice of someone from World War One, where the Nazis weren't even about. So
I think, Mike, you're thinking about the kind of, I would say, Captain America.
Yes.
People go to the cinema and then they see the boys abroad fighting the good fight. So I think you're thinking the Second World War.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, you know far more about history than I do. I know I have a GCSE in it, but I do not know that much about history, clearly, by mixing my announcements up. But I like that element of things. But the series as a whole, Maff, as you were saying, like, Ahsoka does feel a bit out of place. And there are some episodes where I'm like, oh, this is a very much an Ahsoka episode. This makes a lot of sense. And there's other episodes I'm like, is she even in it? And then she'll just pop up and you're like, whoa. It almost makes me think of the Office meme with Dwight when he's in the arcade and Angela's behind him. And he's like, oh, fuck. It's just like, she at times feels shoehorned in and other times not. And this is really a season that it really feels like this encapsulates this season, for me at least, a lot of the issues with the prequels, which again, it builds off the prequels, but it's just like, you get one episode and you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then you get another episode, you go, God, that's actually really clever social commentary, deep elements, characters. And then the next episode is just crap again. And you're like, what is this? So I want to ask you, Megan, with this, were there any standout episodes for you?
They just all blend into one.
I assumed it would be the Kit Fisto one.
What happens in it? The thing is that I don't remember. I don't remember.
You just like his sweet Jamaican accent.
Well, I mean, I liked Kit Fisto before I even heard he had a voice. Like, I don't know why. I've always just had
that smile in Attack of the Clones.
That cheeky little smile. I've always just had an affiliation with Kit Fisto. I've always really liked him.
Yeah, and there's more of Kit Fisto to come.
Yeah. I don't really remember what happens in that episode, if I'm being completely honest.
So it's my personal favourite episode, and I think it's the best standalone episode, or amidst the best standalone episodes in the entire of the Clone Wars series, Lair of Grievous. It's when he goes to Grievous's lair and they see all the statues of Grievous before he got like cybernetically changed.
Yeah, and fucking
and he's got
his face. Count Dooku has like set it up so that his droids aren't like protecting the lair thing.
And then you've got Kit Fisto's prior Padawan who's a bit too foolhardy, and then he just gets decimated by Grievous. So you're like, this is a kids show.
Yeah, no, that's a good episode. I enjoyed that episode. I will say I didn't realize how fucking brutal it was from the start. Like, it is a kids episode, and subtitles, because we watch it with subtitles sometimes. On one of them the other day, I'm pretty sure it said breaks neck.
It does, yeah.
And I was like, this is a kids show. Like, breaks neck, crack. It's like, Jesus Christ, all right.
Yeah, this season has a little snippets of it, and then you get to season sort of 4 or 5. Every episode, you're like, this is like a 12A, but there's just no blood, so they get away with it all. But were there any highlights or lowlights for you for this season? I know it all kind of blends into one.
It does all blend into one. I don't really remember them. There were a couple of naff episodes, but I don't really remember what ones they were.
That's fine. That's fine.
I did like the Kit Fisto one, and I liked the Darth Binks one, even though it was a lot of Jar Jar.
Bombad Jedi.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll delve into that and I'll ask these two of their thoughts on their favourite episodes as well. But Jar Jar in this, do you find Jar Jar in the Clone Wars, because he does pop up again, yay, I think he almost pops up every season, annoyingly, but do you think Jar Jar's more or less annoying in this? Because he's still voiced by Ahmed Best as well, so
God, that was a weird noise.
You trying to be a little monster in Clone Wars?
Yep. So I was like, is that the same voice actor? And Mike was like, yeah, and I was like, he does sound a bit different in the series than he did in the movie. I don't know, he's just still incompetent, isn't he? Like, when he's in Attack of the Clones, he's suddenly become, like, he's a senator.
But this is after Attack of the Clones.
No, I know it's Attack. Yeah, but in Attack of the Clones, he seems much more serious and that he's, like, grown up a bit. And then in this, he's, like, still, everyone's, he's just nuts. Like, there's one thing that did make me laugh in that episode is where they were like, yes, you've been rewarded with extra special training. Yay. And then Rex is like, I'm not doing it. I'm not training him. And I'm like, yeah, because he's incompetent. Everything that he does is like by accident. Everything that he does that is good is completely by accident.
And mostly he does it bad.
Or
And
is
he's-
it the Force?
well, yeah.
Darth Jar Jar
It's the Darth Binkus. It's the dark side.
he does put the hood up.
This is true. And he did look like the guy who cosplayed as him.
Yeah.
When
That's
we were
where
at
that
Star
kind
Wars
of
Celebration.
that image people have manipulated on the internet a lot to make a Darth Jar Jar Darth Binks.
Do I think he's more or less annoying than in Phantom Menace? I honestly couldn't tell you. He's probably equally as irritating.
Okay, we'll go on this Jar Jar tangent then before we get into favourite episodes. So, Maff, what did you think of Jar Jar in this?
I don't think he's bad. I think we do kind of get episodes of him, so you kind of stuck with him for that episode. But I think they've toned him down a little bit. But he still has that. He has that incompetence of where it's like he annoyed me when Ahsoka was in the one where they in the tunnels under Naboo, and it's all poison gas.
Yeah.
And Ahsoka's taking out one of the roller droids, and he shoots, and it's like, why would you do that? Why would you shoot where she is? And that it's not like, oops, a daisy. He chose to shoot there. So maybe that's probably why a lot of people said about the Darth Binkus, because he does do things that doesn't make sense.
And he's the only one that's got a suit on at the end. He's the only one that's like left with like a life reserve.
Yeah, the poison gas one.
The poison gas. He's the only one that's got a coat on. Like everyone else is dying, and he's just like, yeah, all right, I'm Jar Jar.
Yeah, it's a point. Give me that, you get. But I don't know. He's one of them characters that you kind of love to hate to a certain degree. I don't think he's as bad. I don't feel he's as annoying. But again, although you have an episode of him, they're only 20 minutes long, so it's like done and dusted fairly quickly, and then you move on to something else. You know, you see Ventress or something like that, which is a lot better. So little bits kind of sprinkled in there now and again, I can deal with, and that I think if it was a let's do a Jar Jar movie, no. I love Star Wars, but do you know what? Dave Filoni? No.
Well, speaking of Dave Filoni, Dave, what did you think of Jar Jar? I know you're the biggest Jar Jar fan in comics and motion, so...
Well, I did let you have a peek at my notes before, and I just put in the episode he was on. Fuck Jar Jar Binks. Honestly, I mean, Maff says you love to hate him. I don't know. I just fucking hate him. There's no love about it. I don't think. And you know what? He shows up in the episode. I'm like, oh yeah, fucking hell. And then there's a moment where they're playing with us, because I agree. I'm sure we've discussed it a few times. There was probably a bigger role for him. And then just because everyone was just, oh my God, what is this going on about? Then Attack of the Clones, he was toned right down and probably written out of some bits. But in this episode, you know, he kind of falls over the side and you get C-3PO. It's like, oh no, Jar Jar's dead. And I'm like, fucking yes. Oh wait, no, he can't. That can't be right. Yeah, and he shows up and I thought, oh, you bastard Filoni. You have done that just to fuck with people like me who can't stand him. So, yeah, he's kind of there for a bit and then he goes. So I kind of just grit my teeth through the episodes he's in, to be honest.
Yeah.
Can I ask, who do you find more annoying? Now, I know Dave's going to say Jar Jar straight away, but Jar Jar or C-3PO? Because I find C-3PO more annoying than what I do with Jar Jar, to be fair.
Depends on the film.
C-3PO is just a bit fruity, though, isn't he? You know, he's sort of a fruity waiter type of thing. I think he's all right, and I've kind of grown up with C-3PO, and he's just a bit of a pompous tool, isn't he? You know, and he is a bit annoying, but yeah, I can get him. I can get C-3PO because you do get pompous fools like that, don't you? You don't get people like Jar Jar Binks in everyday life.
But, well, you've been to Yorkshire. And it's I don't know. I prefer episodes with Jar Jar to C-3PO. I feel C-3PO is forced in there, whereas Jar Jar, though he's annoying, he kind of fits the story more. Whereas again, C-3PO just feels like we need him in this series, so we need to put him in here.
Like he's a cameo.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel like he should be there.
What do you think, Megan? Because obviously R2 is one of your favourite characters, but a lot of the time R2 is balanced by 3PO. So what do you find 3PO annoying, or what's your kind of thought?
I think 3PO's mean.
He is mean.
He's really mean to R2. And R2 does loads of stuff to help him.
But R2
is also mean to 3PO. I think Jar Jar is far more annoying than 3PO, but I think that arguably 3PO is programmed that way. He can't help it.
And programmed for etiquette, not destruction.
Yeah, he's programmed. That's his programming. He's what is he? I can communicate in over 6 million languages.
Yeah, he's a protocol droid.
So yeah, I don't know. I prefer 3PO to Jar Jar, but I don't hate Jar Jar.
I think 3PO does get annoying, and he's mean to people. He's quite vindictive to R2 at times. He's the kind of thing where it's like R2 does something mean, so he wants to do something mean back, which is quite awful. And Jar Jar's just like IQ of -5. The problem I find with Jar Jar in a lot of these episodes is that there's an episode with Padme, I think it might have been Bombad Jedi, and they basically solved the problem within 4 minutes of the episode, but then Jar Jar trips and falls on something and destroys their ship, and then it makes the rest, and you're just like, for me, Jar Jar is essentially, here's a really simple premise, and we're going to get a fucking idiot to get in there.
Well, he's just
press
used
4 wrong buttons.
He's like an obstacle, isn't he?
Yeah, but except everyone not
repeatedly.
People don't like him. Yeah, any mission he goes on, he seems to mess up 4 out of 5 things, and then right at the end he'll kind of come through surprisingly. And
only because he makes a mistake. He makes another mistake.
Yeah, he trips and falls.
Well, it's the same as in the Phantom Menace. He trips and falls and makes all of those fucking blue orb things bounce off shit. And then in this one, he does the same. He obviously shoots the gun and that makes everything bad, but then he also trips over or something and then resolves the day, and it's just you didn't fucking do anything. You're the root of all of our problems.
I think also Jar Jar is Jar Jar in Phantom Menace, excluding Attack of the Clones and Revenge of the Sith, where he doesn't really do much apart from grant Palpatine emergency powers in the second one. He's basically just the same in Clone Wars and Phantom Menace, whereas 3PO changes a lot, because 3PO in the original trilogy, he's mean, but he balances with R2, and he's quite a good way into the story. R2 and 3PO is kind of your actual entrance into Star Wars after the hallway scene with Vader. And then original trilogy, prequel trilogy, and sequel trilogy 3POs are basically 3 almost different people. Because prequel trilogy 3PO is not only boring, but he sucks. Whereas original trilogy is kind of, his dynamic of R2 is great. And then the sequel trilogy, he has the least to do, but in the sequel trilogy, he's probably the best, which is weird. I think the best 3PO is the Rise of Skywalker 3PO, even though the plot around him's crap. The humour that Anthony Daniels does, oh, guess you didn't recognise me because of the red arm. I know that's script, but it's when Han Solo and Leia see each other for the first time, and then you just see 3PO's face hello, hello, I don't understand social conventions. Isn't that funny? And in Rise of Skywalker, when they all flew through that sand pit, and there's Finn, Rey, are we okay? And 3PO's I'm okay. No one asked, but I'm okay. And it's weird with 3PO. I do like him, but it's kind of who's writing him. He's one of those characters, I think.
I think as well, like you said, I'm getting into the comments as well. I'm seeing different droids, and there's so many better ones. It's
yes,
Chopper from Rebels is fantastic. I'd love to see Chopper and R2 together. I mean,
there's a comic for that.
I'm sure there will.
Chopper is also mean.
Dark Droids crossover event, the D-Squad miniseries.
Right, I'm gonna have to have a look at that one because I just, I mean, both it's subtitled because who knows what they're fucking saying. But I just, there's so many better droids out there, and I just, like you say, I think it is that C-3PO just kind of, he likes to put people down sometimes, and I think that's what has always kind of turned me off a little bit about him, the fact that he just seems to kind of be quite negative on people, and it's oh, come on. And surely surely Anakin could have programmed you a little bit better than this.
Well, I was going to check. I'm just checking with you, Megan, how you're doing.
I'm
Because
tired.
you're tired.
I'm flagging.
You want to tap out? You've been here for half an hour. You've had a 13-hour workday. Do you want to tap out?
Yeah, but is there anything else that you want to ask me?
I was going to ask them for their favourite episodes, and then after that I was going to kind of go through the episodes. So is there anything else you want to add for season 1? Or is there anything you want to tease Maff with what you're excited for going forward?
I'm not going to tease anything because I don't want to run the risk of producing a spoiler, but it gets so fucking good. Is it in the next series? There's one episode that makes me really sad.
Oh no, yeah, I think it's...
Is that in the next series?
I think it is.
No.
That episode is horrendous. I may cry at that one. I had to hold back tears the first time I watched it, but...
Can't wait.
Yeah, it will touch you.
Yeah, I can't really say. I don't want to spoil it,
No,
but
you
it's
can't even
an
hint at
episode. It's a very emotional episode for many different things, and I'm like,
It's amusing that like in Rebels, obviously there is one major episode that really,
My boy.
even thinking about it, it's like, oh, I can't believe you did that to me. That's more upsetting than some of the stuff that's happening in Star Wars. That hit me more than anything else.
Oh, it's not anything quite as major as that, but it is. Yeah,
There's two. There's two big events that are three big events that happen in the Clone Wars.
You don't have to.
I'm just saying there are three big events in Clone Wars which make me really emotional. And one of them is not major for the canon, but it's an insular story that's really, really touching. That's the one Megan's talking about. The other two are like two of the biggest stories in the whole series. So that'll be obvious when we get there. But yeah, next series, the animation improves a smidge, I think. But then series 3, it legitimately jumps up.
it is really
It's
interesting.
like 5 years almost.
It's really interesting with the animation, actually, because I remember, because obviously we watched Clone Wars first and then Rebels, and I remember watching Rebels after watching the Clone Wars and being like, I fucking hate the animation. The animation is really weird, and now we've gone back to like series 1 of the Clone Wars, and I'm like, what the hell is this animation?
Well, one quick question then for you before you dart off. Do you think season 1 of Rebels or season 1 of Clone Wars is better? Like, if you were to recommend someone...
Season 1 of Rebels is better than season 1 of Clone Wars, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I agree personally, and ask these guys as well. But did you want to tap out now before we go into anything further? Tap. And then we'll get you back for... At the very least, we'll try and get you back for half an hour, 20 minutes in each episode.
I thought you were going to say later on. I was like,
No,
you're
you're
going
going to go to bed.
I'm going to bed.
No,
Come back
but
now.
we'll have to get you in for season 3 because the premiere of that's got Kit Fisto in it. So
Love
I have
Kit
to.
Fisto.
You love Kit
I'm
Fisto.
happy to do all of them. It's just unfortunate that I forgot that this was options evening and this was booked. So it's my
fine.
bad.
It's not a problem. Okay, Duckley. Well, I bid you adieu.
Goodbye.
No,
Bye.
can't give you any affection.
Goodbye,
See you
everyone.
later.
I mean, it's going to be a very anticlimactic leave because it's going to take me a while to just get out of this chair. So
I will edit.
this is going to be edited.
I'll fast forward it so it looks like she's doing it really
Oh my
quickly.
gosh, I've disappeared.
It's
the bloody blanket.
Yeah, it's the most narrow. There's books here, and there's a Jar Jar head up there. So if you hit the bookshelf, Jar Jar will crush it. You have to take the headphones
I
off.
know I have
my
to
love.
take the headphones off.
Just take
It
the
would be
microphone.
quite amusing if the Jar Jar head just falls down now and
Right
lands
to
on.
Megan.
Onto your head.
Honestly, absolutely massive.
Yeah, it's pretty. There it is.
There was there's a kid who that's not in my tutor group anymore because they've gone to a different school, but he was talking to me about Star Wars and he was like, yeah, I love Star Wars, like no one likes Star Wars more than me. And I was like, you want to fucking bet? And I showed him that picture of that Jar Jar head and he was like, what the hell is that? And I was like, yeah, right, you still think you're the biggest Star Wars fan, do you?
Well, you also get quizzed on it, don't they? Like, do you know who this character is? And you go, yes, it's from this. Do you know who this character is? Yes, from this. And then you're like, do you know this character is? They're like, no. And you're like, there you go, punk.
Well, I've also been I do parents' evening in here, and there's been a couple of times where I've had big Star Wars fans be like, Miss, look at my Boba Fett. And I'm like, I don't give a fuck about your Boba Fett, but thank you for showing me. I've got enough Star Wars stuff in my house. Right, bye.
So, yeah.
Thank you so much, Megan. I hugely appreciate you
It's all right.
for dipping in.
You can take the good chair back.
I can take the good chair back, but I'm not going to because this one is playing ball for once, which is surprising. And then there was one, even though Megan's actually in the background. Can you take your half-drink off?
Then I can't take this.
Thank you, my love. See you later. Right, Dave. Favorite episode or favorite episodes, and then I'll go to Maff for that, and then we'll kind of loosely go through them.
So I do agree the Lair of Grievous one is pretty good, and I think the creepiness to it I think was really good, and the fact that you get the cocky little Padawan, he gets taken out. And even the one after that where Dooku gets captured, and you kind of get the reverse, don't you, of Obi-Wan in Attack of the Clones. So that was kind of cool. But, weirdly, I really like Rookies.
That was my second favorite.
Yeah, it doesn't get rated that highly, but for me, one of the great things that I love about the Clone Wars is exploring the whole idea of the clones and the fact that you've got these, they're basically human beings, aren't they? But they just happen to be grown from the same DNA, but they've all got their own different personalities. And so seeing those interactions, you get introduced to Rex and Fives and Echo, and so and meet more of them later. But I really like that one. I think that was the one that stood out for me.
When I get people to watch this, actually no, I'll go to Maff first. So Maff, your favourite episode or episodes, if there's arcs?
My favourite is Trespass.
Okay, so on the planet of on the moon of Pantora, where they go and it's like the relate trying to speak to someone.
The towels.
That's a very interesting. What do you like that?
I don't know. I just like the fact that Obi-Wan and Anakin are kind of side characters. They're there, and they kind of keep saying, "Look, we're here." And it's same with the clone troopers. They're there, but they're kind of in the background, and it's between is it Chicho and
it's Senator Churchy.
Church and no, that's the girl. The
TARS, the guard. Do you mean the chairman or the
chairman? Yeah, that's him.
Yeah.
I just like the fact that he was very much kind of, in a way, it's a bit like when the Americans kind of went in and to take over the Native American. I want to try to be as politically correct as I can be there, but
the native people.
Yes, it was very much kind of, well, we're here now. This is ours, and it's like, well, no, there's someone else who lives here. You've got to take them into account. And Ryo, she's very much kind of, well, I want to do the right thing, but he's in charge. And she was kind of put in a position where she had to kind of take control. But I just like the fact that there was, we've got C-3PO in there as well, haven't we? So, but when they were just trying to communicate, and it was very kind of, they were so limited, but they were able to talk an awful lot. It was just that relationship between them both, and seeing how they were going to kind of come together. And you could see this destructive arc that the chairman was going down, and the fact that all the clone troopers are trying to protect him, but try not to do anything. And it was just that fine line of politics that they kind of have there, and that until the point where, he ends up getting killed, and it's like, avenge me. And then she was left in that predicament of, right, what do you want to do now? And she chooses the right thing to kind of, look, let's bring peace together, let's do this. But it just, one of those episodes that kind of came in, and I didn't expect it. And it just kind of made you think, there's a lot more to this. That they can sprinkle little episodes like that in here that make you kind of think of, oh, we could all be a lot better about ourselves, treating other people. You see Star Wars, you see all these different races, all these different species kind of together and that, but you don't really get the kind of, racism kind of thing there. And they did it in here, and I think they did it really well. I really enjoyed that one.
That's a very interesting episode, actually, because that's not one that springs to mind for me. But interestingly enough, what I'll say about that episode is the themes in which you like about this episode do get delved into more. Like, I feel like almost every episode of this, like there's the two episodes which is Downfall of a Droid and Duel of the Droids, where it's got like the bad droid Goldie and things, obviously, which is your background math for anyone who's watching on video. Almost every episode or arc in this season, just looking at them, essentially, if you spread them apart and genred them, every element that's kind of tackled in each of these arcs is essentially something that gets expanded in a later season. So what you were speaking about, there's a lot of episodes in the future which are about, because this is quite early on in the war, when you get later on, there starts being issues about resources and what do we do about planets that are trying to be neutral, but they have something that can make us win the war? What does the Republic do? What does the Republic do when they could save a few lives, or they could save a shipment of something that could, in theory, turn the tide of the war? And it brings about some very interesting questions. And the character of Senator Chuchi, she comes up again. She becomes quite an interesting character. She's not far removed from like Ahsoka and Padme, the kind of younger but strong-willed individuals who are just really headstrong and know what they're doing. But me personally, I'd say Lair of Grievous is my top. Rookies is my second. And when I showed Megan initially, years back, when I showed her, I showed a Cloak of Darkness, which is the one just before Lair of Grievous. Then Lair of Grievous, and then I showed her Rookies, and then the finale. That's all I showed her. And I only actually showed her the finale because I knew it connected with something later on. Not until season 3, bizarrely. But I'll delve into that right at the end. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't have put Trespass up there. But speaking about it, and I can remember it quite vividly, much more than a lot of the other episodes, is a pretty good shout, I'd say. So if you are both willing, we'll go through the episodes somewhat. So first of all, the first episode, Ambush, with Yoda and stuff, I thought was cool. I like the intro, and I feel like that episode probably would have been better in the movie, even if the animation was a bit janky. What did you both think of that? And then we'll go into the Malevolence arc. So I'll go to you, Dave, first. What did you think of Ambush?
I thought it was fine. I thought it was okay. Like I say, I found the animation a bit jarring, but it's weird doing it on a rewatch because when I watched it the first time, I'd already watched the Clone Wars movie. And as we discussed when we covered the movie, I think the stain that it left on me was the whole stinky stuff, and I remembered that quarter out of the whole movie the most. And so I came into this, it was probably based on a conversation with you, Mike, and then gone like, oh, right, okay, we'll go into it and I'll watch it. And actually, I thought it was okay. And I guess what I like is not the subtext, but I like the theme. I like the fact that it's delving into, you've got all these neutral kind of planets, and then the Republic and the Separatists are vying for whose side are they going to be on. And we were talking about history before, but you look at the world wars in particular and like alliances, and certain deals like I'll do this if you do this, and all those trade-offs and things. So I kind of like the way that was set up there and just hinting to that more complex world.
Interesting. What do you think, Maff?
I like the fact that you get to see Yoda being a bit of a badass. But again, Yoda's teaching the clones a valuable lesson of, look, you're all individual, you all came, you're all clones, you all look kind of the same, but you've all got your own personalities, and you all are good at certain things. So it was like a life lesson for them to move forward. It was kind of one of those that I'm not sure it should have been episode 1. Maybe it should have been further down, because it was just like plonky straight into it. This is Star Wars, which is fine. It's fine because I'm into Star Wars again. I'm wanting to watch this. But if you was coming in this without any knowledge, you'd be like, who's this? That's the only thing with this season, has been a little bit like there's not backstory to really any of the characters.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed the fact that I thought it was going to be very much kind of Anakin and Ahsoka and Obi-Wan now and again. Because obviously I don't know what's kind of going to be coming. But I like the fact that it's not that. It's kind of, you always hear about all these different Jedis, but never see them. And now I'm seeing Kit Fister. I'm seeing, what's the...
Plo Koon?
No, I've got her written down.
Plo Koon,
She's
Luminara.
Luminara. Yeah,
yeah,
'cause she's mentioned in Rebels, isn't she?
Her corpse is
It's
used
the
in
one
Rebels.
from the
Yeah, I was wondering if you'd pick up on that.
Yeah.
Her corpse is used to trap Jedi by the Inquisitors. How fucked up is that?
Did she train Kanan?
No, Kanan was trained by Depa Billaba.
Right. Do we get to see her?
Yes and no.
Right, okay, fair enough.
What I have planned for us with this show and subsequent shows, you will get a nice full story of most things that you want. But where they may or may not fall, I don't know. You know, there is also a comic that is actually set between 2 seasons of the Clone Wars as well. Of course, there is. Well, there's a whole book that's used, which I'll delve into when we're in season 7 of the Clone Wars. But there's a whole book which is made from unused Clone Wars arcs because Clone Wars got cancelled in season 6. So season 6 just kind of stops,
right?
And there's no, it doesn't connect to anything. It just kind of stops, and you're like, oh. And then that was it for over a decade. And then they released season 7 after Rebels and stuff, and it finalized certain things, but it only finalized like 2 stories. There were still other loose ends. So
yeah,
yes
but I mean that's what I've enjoyed, the fact that we are seeing more of the Star Wars world. We are seeing these other Jedis. That it's like, to be fair, General Grievous. I remember him vaguely from the film, but I didn't really know anything about him. I actually thought he was a Force user as well. I thought it was a bit like a prototype to Vader in a certain degree.
That's a very popular theory. A lot of people believe that Dooku and Palps used Grievous, the technology, to turn Grievous into that.
But he's not Force sensitive, is he? He's
No.
just a normal guy, and that he just decides to take lightsabers as trophies.
Yeah, his backstory is kind of like, it's touched upon in Legends. It was a lot more flushed out, but essentially he's a Kaleesh warrior, which is the species he is, and he was like the greatest warrior of his planet, and then and he was like causing basically genocide to this insect beings on his planet, and he was killing all of them, and then some Jedi intervened, completely stopped him, destroyed him in battle, and then he was like, the Force is basically cheating, so I'm going to cheat as well. And that's why in the episode, Lair of Grievous, when he's been changed and his droid who's repairing him says, I don't know why you chose these changes. And he's like, they're improvements. And the droid's like, are they though? So it's quite complex there.
Yeah, but it's quite cool, the fact that he kind of spider climbs across things, and he's able to put himself in different positions, different ways out.
Yeah. There's quite a lot of body horror stuff of that. Well, if we jump over that, if we go to the kind of the Grievous arc, so that's Bombad Jedi with everyone's favourite. There's Cloak of Darkness, which is when Luminara, Unduli, and Ahsoka are trying to transport Nute Gunray, and then Ventress attacks and stuff. And then there's a guard who betrays the Republic, who's voiced by James Masters, who's Spike in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, which is really cool. I was like, I recognise that voice. And then Lair of Grievous, obviously the body horror-esque one. So, Dave, did you want to talk a little bit about those kind of 3 episodes together, if there's anything that stood out for you, or anything loosely to what we've just been talking about?
I don't know if I could group them. What I will say, right, is something that we touched on a little bit earlier, but I just want to underline it a bit. This whole season is so full of this pendulum swing between being a really kiddie after school cartoon and having some really deep adult themes, you know. So you've got there was one episode, and I can't remember which one it was. I think it was early in the season, but they've got some of the clones captured. And, you know, the droids are like, hey, what should we do with that? Whoa. And then they end up just jettisoning them, the clones, out into space to die.
Yeah, that's the first arc. That's the Malevolence arc. Yeah, that is that. When I watched that, I was like, I forgot about this part. You're watching like a corpse just float in space.
Yeah, and you're like, what the fuck? Like, what are you actually trying to do? I mean, that was heart-wrenching, you know. That was horrible, wasn't it? You know, so I I think it's finding its feet very much in this season, and I guess you can't get away from the droids and kind of what they were in Phantom Menace, so you just continue in that. But you can tell that they're wanting to tell this much darker story. And I think with what they've got, with the, like I say, you're trying to get planets on side, and you're making these tactical moves. The closest I'll ever come to is playing Risk. But and then, like say in the what was the episode? Rookies. You start to look at just more characters, more people, and their interactions as well, as opposed to this macro war that's going on and strategic things and what have you. So, yeah, I think, even though I say nothing, it's really difficult to go back and say, oh, yeah, this particular arc, did this, because I just felt a bit empty at the end of each arc. Like, none of it really mattered that much.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I guess I would say about the sort of malevolence arc is, how does no one pick up on the fact that Anakin and Padme are together? I mean, they make it so obvious, oh, it's a Naboo ship. Fucking hell, I best go. It's just
but that's the same as
it?
How do they not work out that Palpatine, is more than what he kind of is claiming to? I mean, Padme is held hostage, and that and you kind of watching it and thinking it's so obvious. Just kind of open your eyes. You can see the fact the bad guy is right in front of you, and they don't. But that don't fit the narrative. That's why. So it's.
I think the in plain sight thing, though, it's a good challenge, but for some reason, I can kind of forgive it, because he's playing both sides off each other. I mean, he wins no matter what.
That's what I was thinking. It's like playing chess against yourself, or even when you were little, when you had Star Wars figures and you would play, and that you're playing both sides. So whichever way you want it to go, you're gonna win, because if you want the bad guys to win at this point, you're still playing it, so you're getting the right outcome. It's amusing to watch Palpatine kind of do this at the moment. Of however it goes, it works out good for him, and it'll either set him off down this path to get to what he wants, or he sets him off. It's amusing the fact that he kind of he's like several steps in front of everybody else, and whatever kind of comes out, he's already got another plan for that.
I mean, I'm saying he's playing both sides, so he wins no matter what. So he doesn't care which side wins, but the more that it escalates, that's how he wins. So, if everyone just agreed, oh, let's shake hands and trade nicely, well, he doesn't get the power, but it's by inciting fear in people, creating this divisive culture, demonizing other people. You got the separatists, you got the Republic, and you got all these planets and stuff with their own agendas in there. If they all played nice, he doesn't get what he wants. And again, I think that's where obviously Clone Wars Season 1 didn't create that, but it is expanding on it, on that whole idea that happened with the prequels. And again, you just look at the world now, as opposed to when the prequels came out, you'd have said, oh yeah, that's kind of like what happened in World War II, isn't it? Or Germany between 1918 and 1939 or whatever. Now you look at it and you're like, yeah, that seems to be happening in the world right now.
Yeah, Palpatine, I think, in a lot of ways represents the powers behind the politicians a lot of the time. There's the argument that, it doesn't matter if in the UK or in America if the Republicans / the Tories or if the Democrats / Labour are in power. It doesn't really matter, because behind that, the veneer of politics, there's the military-industrial complex that just it makes money from being at war. So any opportunity, and because it's not just a person, it's a group, the thing I always say to people is like, there were those missiles that I think it was when we were fighting in Syria, and it was something like a missile was like $30,000 or something per missile or something nuts. And they were saying the amount they were firing basically over the course of a couple of weeks would essentially bail the NHS out of all debt. And the idea is, well, that £30,000, it's like, oh yeah, we're spending that. It's like, no, we're giving that to someone. The government is paying someone to make the missile. So the person who wins in war is never the person who's in war, it's whoever's funding it. And that idea develops a lot more. There's a whole arc I remember loosely in the future, which is all about the banking clan, and the banking clan are aligned with the separatists, but they also bail out the Republic because the Bank of the Republic is liable to the banking clan. So you've got basically a galaxy bank that is funding both sides, but actually leans more towards the separatists. And there's like a whole arc about that. And I'm like, that's a really high concept idea for something that's a show that's allegedly aimed at 7-year-olds.
Yeah.
And you're just like, the complexities of this. And I think this is easing people in, but this show really is a show that grows with people. Like, if you think, like, Clone Wars, from seasons 1 to 6, it goes over about 6 years. So you think that if you started watching this as a 7-year-old, you'd finish it as a 12-year-old, which, that's quite a big difference if you interact with a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old. 12-year-olds actually have real opinions about certain things. But if you think about a 10-year-old to a 15-year-old as well, that is from political understanding from a 10-year-old to a 15-year-old is night and day. And I think that this show really works a lot in those things. But I think that this whole season of the 22 episodes probably only need about 10, 12 maybe. I think there are 12 episodes in this. 3 of the arcs, and then a few, like an arc and then an individual episode, then an arc, then an individual episode. If you kind of did it like that, I think, go ahead.
I feel that they was trying to see what works. So, because it does feel like it's like one of the books I read to George, and it's just a lot of random stories kind of put together, and it's very much kind of that. Let's throw a load of different kind of story arcs out there, see what works, then go from there and kind of build from that way. So it's good in one sense because, like I said, you're seeing lots of different aspects of Star Wars. But other than when you get to the last 2 episodes, there's no real timeline. It just kind of, here's another one. It's like Monster of the Week. That which Mandalorian did that. To be fair, the first season was very much kind of Monster of the Week, kind of, oh, what we're doing this week. All right, here we go. And this is what this one, none of them kind of seem to flow, but it's kind of to see what works.
Yeah.
Maybe why further down the line, maybe they have a bit more kind of structure to them.
They do. There are arcs that have actual consequence. That's like a big, especially the later seasons. There's things that happen, and you can draw a line from that episode arc to things that happen in like Revenge of the Sith, for example. And there's quite a few of those. But I agree. The biggest problem with this series is everything is inconsequential. Like the first arc is the Malevolence arc. That's quite a cool arc. You get Plo Koon in the first episode of that arc, and Plo Koon's amazing. And he has the iconic line, which is when the clones are like, "We're just meant to be expendable, sir." And he goes, "Not to me." And that links with how Yoda treats them in the first episode. It's this whole thing that the Jedi treat the clones like people, not just soldiers. And that's one of the key differences there. But like, that's a cool arc. But you think, what, the Separatists have a super weapon that's a super ion cannon that can disable any ship, and it would turn the tide of the war. But it's in episode 2, 3, and 4 of a 22-season arc. And you're like, well, this whole season isn't all going to be about malevolence, surely. And it kind of shoots itself in the foot by being in that way. So there's a couple episodes here. It says, Ambush we talked about, Malevolence we've touched on. Is there anything you want to add about Rookies, Dave?
No, I think I was just trying to
not spoil.
Remember as well exactly what happened with some of the characters.
Because there's certain episodes that follow on from Rookies as well.
Yeah, so I think, I probably won't say anything more about that, but yeah.
Is it a spoiler that Heavy didn't actually die?
Well, with Rookies, I'll say that in an episode in season 2 and an episode in season 3, I put them together, become one arc. So it's like there's this weird flashback arc, but you only get one episode per season. It's really odd. But sorry, Maff, go ahead.
Yeah, because that's one where Heavy, the detonator doesn't work, so he stays behind to make sure he kind of takes everybody out. Which, again, it's another one of those where they are just clones, so you kind of think, well, they're just, they're all kind of the same, but they're not. You're starting to see personalities between them all. And that bit where kind of Heavy's like, shit, I'm going to have to. And you can see on his face that I know I have to stay behind to make sure that you all get out. And it's that ultimate sacrifice. And again, you've only known him for, a short amount of time, but you can't think, shit, that's quite hard hitting, really. In a kid's show, it's kind of like, that sacrifice that he's given to make sure for the greater good.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting when you can remember, because there's certain clones, like I remember Heavy. If you said name 10 clones, you go Rex, Cody, and then I'd probably say Fives, Echo, and then there's ones later on in the season that come up a bit more. But Heavy was one that when he died in this, I was like, Heavy dies? I was like, I remember Heavy more. I thought he had a bigger impact, but it's because he's in a couple of flashback episodes. But I thought he was one that lasted a long time, and he dies in like episode 5. And I'm like, and he's not in any other episodes like of this season. I love rookies. And as Dave said, I think some of the best standalone episodes in Clone Wars, for the most part, are ones that hyper focus on the clones. They're really good. So, just skipping through stuff. So we've got done Cloak of Darkness, Bombad Jedi. There's the Dooku captured arc with Hondo Ohnaka, and then there's also Jedi Crash, which is when Anakin is severely injured. And Ayla Secura is there, who's the only other character in Star Wars who dresses like Ahsoka. It's the only two scantily clad Jedi in the whole order happen to both be women, which is interesting. But with those two arcs,
strange, a guy walking around with just like a boob tube on as well, though, to be fair.
But the thing is that it's not really, because if you're in war, you wear clothing to protect yourself against shrapnel, blaster bolts, and you've got someone's midriff showing it. So it doesn't matter if you're male or female. It doesn't matter if you've got, a six-pack or if you're a bit flabby. If you get shot there, it's going to go through you. So it's that thing.
But we've had this for years. It's like, if you play an MMO and that, if you're playing a male character or a female character, you pick the same armor. It looks completely different. One's basically just covering nipples. That's the males. But that's kind of what people kind of used to. I'm not saying it's right.
Yeah.
And that we had it with Padme when she kind of
scratch.
Look, I just got scratched here. Let's show up a little bit
in
more
the
flex.
sexiest way.
Yeah.
It's just
one of the things that always put me off about. I love Resident Evil 2, the game, but the character, the female character in there, has basically got a crop top. So armless,
Jill Valentine?
shoulderless.
Is that her name?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. And like little tiny, short shorts as well. It's like, if you're running around where zombies can just give you a little scratch or a little nibble, why would you expose all your skin? I know exactly why they do it, but I can't separate from the practicalities of it. Whereas, like you say, the guys have got, big jackets on and stuff.
Well, it's especially when you see Luminara with Ahsoka only a few episodes prior, and Luminara is wearing what you would expect a magic monk to wear. Ayla's, I will say, although I brought it up, Ayla's wearing that because she's not in the Clone Wars that much, but she's in Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones as a background character, non-speaking role, and she... Apologies if you don't remember this, Maff, but she dies in Order 66. She's on Felucia, and she gets shot in the back by her clones. And what she's wearing in this episode is exactly what she's wearing at the time. So, although I'm poking fun, it's just because 3 years earlier, that's just what she was wearing, and she's not
kind
a
of
major
dressed
character.
like a Twi'lek dancer, isn't she?
Well, Twi'lek, to clarify, both pronunciations are the same, and they come from the term twin Leku, because Leku is the head tails. Twi'leks in Star Wars, especially in Legends, they've wound it back a little bit in canon, were basically slaves, and a lot of the time sex slaves. And that came, I think, from primarily Return of the Jedi, when you see the Twi'lek dancers. So they were kind of, you can mate with a Twi'lek in canon and Legends, as in a human could mate with them. So it's kind of that thing where it's like, hey, it's like a human but exotic, and we can like half enslave them even though they're basically the same. So there is a lot of baggage with Twi'leks to some degree. But Dave, with the and then after this, there's only one more sort of chunk to do. But so there's the Hondo introduction and Dooku getting captured, and then the Anakin getting injured plotline. Did either of those speak to you at all? Is there any comments you have on either of those?
Yeah, with Hondo, I was trying to think, because I'd watched Rebels first and then came to this, and I was trying to think, I guess this is the first time in canon we've actually met him, and I guess when we first meet him, he is a bit more threatening, isn't he? He comes across and he's kind of got Dooku captured, so immediately you're thinking this guy means business. And so it was weird to go back and watch that and see him as this more sort of threatening character. And I found him a bit less annoying as well. I think in Rebels, I found him quite annoying. He's a bit of a dick, and and wouldn't trust him as far as you could throw him. But yeah, I think in this, he is suitably threatening, and so I enjoyed him a bit more in this one.
Mm-hmm. I prefer.
I think
him in this. Go ahead.
I think in this, in Rebels, he seems to have a soft spot for
Ezra.
Yeah. God, that were kind of like his kryptonite in a way. He kind of, whenever Ezra were there, although he was still kind of going back to his old ways, he still always seemed to try and look out for Ezra, and that maybe kind of saw a bit of him in there. Smart, I don't know, not like Jimmy Savile.
Just like small children, small boys.
Yeah, except when he opened the chest up and his little friend was in there. But yeah, in this, he's a lot more menacing. He's a lot more kind of the badass pirate. I liked him in this, and that because it took a second. I kind of thought, is that because it doesn't say who he is at first, and I'm thinking, is that Hondo? It sounds like it. It looks like him. But he's been quite more of a dick than what he normally is. And then as it goes on, you think, yeah. Again, that gymnastics in my brain are kind of like going, is this before? This is before Rebels.
About
so
14 to 17 years-ish before Rebels.
So he's a harder kind of, pirate.
Yeah.
That's what it is. So what he was doing, you can see why he was being that way. And again, if he shows any weakness, all his pirate friends it will just turn on him. So he has to be that way. Mm-hmm. And I think when we do meet him further down the line with Rebels, he's probably mellowed a bit. And again, there's something about Ezra that just seems to kind of soften him more.
Yeah, Hondo comes back a lot. Hondo's my favourite sort of side character in all animation. I adore Hondo. I think everything he says is hilarious. Just when he's got them all locked up and he's just like, my friends, what are you doing? Like I told you, if you break out, I'm gonna have to kill it. I don't want to. Hondo doesn't want to kill you. I want to make money and let you guys be free. But if you cross me again, I will. And it's that thing where you get the thugs below him who are like, yeah, we'll screw Hondo over and we'll kill these people. And Hondo's, he comes off like this kind of thug that's not really there, but he's actually very clever and very calculating, and there's a lot to him. And there's certain antagonists, shall we say, that show up in the season. And when Hondo interacts with the antagonists and the Jedi at the same time, it's a really interesting dynamic. I love characters who are morally grey. They're like my favourite in Star Wars, especially. I like it when you don't know what they're going to do. And I love Hondo. So there's the Anakin gets wounded arc, and then there's the blue shadow virus arc. So do either of you have anything to say on either of those?
Is it Dr. Noon or Vindi?
You mean it could be? I didn't even write down his name because I was like,
I know it's like Vindi.
Nouveau Vindi, yeah.
There you go. Yeah. So
he reminded me of like Mr. Freeze, kind of.
I thought Batman. I was thinking Batman villain.
Yeah, and that I just kind of
eyes to see you.
Yeah, they should have got Arnie in there, but I quite like that. I love the bit. There was a part where I think Anakin had him, and he's like, tell me where the antidote is, and he's like, I just destroy things, and he kind of that realism of he just wants to fuck things up. Really, he's he likes the idea, of kind of destroying things and that, and it would just he didn't really care who got hurt, because it was just, I created this thing to destroy more things and that, and it was just that manic laughter that he kind of had at times as well as he's getting away.
And when Anakin is like, I'll kill you, and he's like, go on then. And it's like, oh, Anakin's like, I'm not used to this. I'm holding a lightsaber. She's like, come on, let me take the sweet embrace of death. And Anakin's like, I don't know what to do now. What do you think, Dave?
Yeah, I guess I didn't feel like there was any peril, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, you know where Padme's story ends up, and I'm not invested into the clones, or individual clones to be bothered. You see them getting cut down all over the place in the movies and here. So when they're just essentially cool-looking stormtroopers, yeah, there's no real stakes there. So I think I was flagging a bit by the time I got to this part of the season. I can't really. I feel like mentally I was, coasting. Foot on the clutch, just coasting to the finish line. Nothing really jumped out at me at all. It was just more of the same. The virus thing could have potentially been quite interesting, but again, I like it where they can play between the spaces of things, and it almost changes what you think you know. Whereas with this, you're like, well, clearly the virus goes nowhere. There's no real impact to any of the major characters at all. So yeah, it certainly lost me around here.
That I would agree. I would say my issue with a lot of the episodes in this is it's like the Malevolence arc and the Blue Shadow virus arc and a couple of others is like, if we don't stop this, the war's over, or the end, or this whole planet's going to be destroyed. And you're like, well, that's not going to happen. So I think that when you have especially prequels to stuff, you can't have the scale being too big, especially not in Star Wars. Like my biggest trope with Star Wars, and when they make the new Rey trilogy and stuff, I'm just like, please don't have a galaxy-ending super weapon. I'm so fucking sick of them because they're not going to win.
Stop.
This isn't the end of the Matrix, even though
that's why Rebels was so good, because you had a group here that didn't have an arc.
Yes,
it was all new characters. Whereas, like you say, they've got plot armor in this, so full well Padme is going to be fine, and that that Jar Jar, he's going to be all right.
Yeah.
Don't matter what you think, Dave, he's going to be fine. And that it's whereas again the clever with the clone troopers, because they give you you get to learn some of the names and that, and then they take one away from you, and really that shouldn't bother you because you just replace them with another one. But it does, because you've got to know the name, and it's like Innocence of Ryloth. When we get, is it Waxer and Boyle?
I've got notes on them. Yes.
Yeah.
Good memory.
They meet the little girl, and it's like, just leave her. It's like, no, I can't. And again, it's that personality that you kind of see, that they're all from the same cloth, but they've all kind of grown up and getting their own way that they're going to be, and that. So you can do more with the clones because they're expendable, to be fair, but they can expend them in a certain way to make it kind of hit you, because they can't kill Anakin off. Even when Anakin will lay there in the episode and they're trying to get the cure and make sure he's fine, he's not going to die, and that. So it doesn't feel that the stakes are there. Whereas all the other characters, I know Kit Fisto dies in.
Pretty much everyone dies in Revenge of the Sith. Let's be honest. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, I would say Order 66. Yeah,
yeah, but Kit dies fighting Palps with Mace Windu.
But there's some Jedi's that you kind of think, well, I don't really know who they are, so you know, is it Master Coon? Is that the one who was Master? Was it Master Coon who was in
Plo Koon.
Plo Koon? He was in the ship hunter.
Yes.
And they were trying to find him before he suffocated.
Yes.
It's like, I don't know who he is. So, you know, again, you could. I mean, if they'd have killed him there, I don't know who he is, so it doesn't really make a difference. But because that you do know him now, if they kill him further down the line, that's going to hit you a bit more. Whereas they can't do that with Anakin. They can't do that with Obi-Wan.
No, exactly. It's one of those. I mean, I remembered almost all of these Jedi and things like that, so I won't spoil for any of these characters of who may or may not pass away. But I'd say we'll delve into the Ryloth arc then, and then that finale, and then we'll kind of start to wrap up. But I will say the only notable thing really about the Anakin being wounded episode, I like throughout the season that Ahsoka is quite foolhardy at times, and she learns a little bit to rein it back. But George Takei was one of the Nemoidian. He was the very chunky Nemoidian who invaded the planet with those peacekeeping little lemur people. And he, I think, I'm trying to remember what they were called. But he basically, it was George Takei, which is a fun little thing. There's little cameos. You get like little characters, little voice actors, just these really minor roles. But we'll delve into the Ryloth arc. Now, this arc has quite large ramifications through Star Wars. I actually skipped this arc with Megan because I, at the time, didn't realize how major it was. But there's a couple of things that are mentioned, and I'll throw it to yourselves. So it's the Twi'lek homeworld, and you've got Boyle and Waxer. Boyle and Waxer appear in a later arc. I'll say one word to Dave, and I hope he understands. The Umbaran arc is where they appear again. There's one very clone-centric arc on a world that is very dimly lit that they play major roles in. But they're part of the 212th Battalion, which is part of Obi-Wan's battalion. And they're also in a comic that I tackled on Comics and Canon, one of the last ones of 2023, which was the Clone Wars Battle Tales comics. And so I saw them in there. I was like, I recognise the name Wax and Boyle. Why is that? And there's this episode and certain things later on. But a big thing is that you mentioned, Maff, the child that gets rescued. Now, that child is called Numa. She's in Rebels. She is one of the two Twi'leks that's with Cham Syndulla when Hera goes and sees her dad, and he's like, you need to come and help me fight on Ryloth. There's a blue-skinned Twi'lek woman called Numa with him. That's her.
Yeah.
And another character. And I remembered somewhere that there was a connection there. But obviously, Cham Syndulla is Hera's dad. And this was before Hera was ever created. He was... So it's interesting because there's things like Hondo. Hondo was probably just a villain of the week. And they were like, let's see where he goes. And he becomes quite a major player. So I like seeing these threads, although one could argue it kind of spoils it because certain characters are being rebels. I quite like that. So I'll go to you first, Dave, with the Ryloth stuff. So is there anything of note? I know you said you were lagging towards the end, but this is like the big finish of the season before the one-off random episode at the end. Did this break through the cloud for you, or were you still a bit lukewarm on this?
Not really, although I do have a very problematic kind of feeling about Mace Windu. I can't decide if I hate him or love him. I mean, it's Sam Jackson, so I kind of love him, but Mace Windu is a bit of a dick.
Megan hates Mace Windu.
Yeah, but the fact that he turns up, I just find him so... I mean, again, with where we know the story ends up, and you think it's like anything, you watch it and you're like, oh, this time, Anakin's not going to turn. He's going to turn back to the Jedi, and you think, well, people like Mace Windu, his dogmatic approach, is what turned him to the dark side. And so, but I kind of, because
He's so badass.
I do like the character.
He's so cool, though. You're watching him pick up clothes with one hand and flip him over stuff and jump over things. You're like, he's the coolest Jedi in this generation, but he's a dick.
I guess you would say he's probably just a badass soldier who shouldn't be near politics. Mm-hmm. It's probably how you wrap him up. So, yeah, he is badass. So, yeah, the overriding feeling is that, I kind of like it when he shows up. It's just that like I say, when you look back and you think, well, yeah, you contributed massively to Anakin turning to the dark side. So kind of fucked up for the galaxy there, Mace.
Agreed. But I love any time he shows up in the show because we really... I mean, Mace Windu is arguably one of the greatest duelists ever in Star Wars. He beats Palpatine. You know, some people argue Palpatine planned that. I personally don't think he did. But he beats Palpatine. He kills Jango Fett. Anyone that Mace Windu goes against, he beats. So it's just like, it's one of those, he's so cool. But yeah, Megan hates Mace Windu, loves the way that he's portrayed, you know, but she says he's the reason. She says after Palpatine, he's the reason Anakin turns. And Megan fully blames him for that. And every time they interact, she's like, oh, Mace Windu's such a dick. What do you think of Mace Windu, Maff, and any comments about the Ryloth arcs?
It was nice to see a different Jedi, and that obviously with his purple lightsaber. But again, you get to see him being a bit of a badass. You know, we saw Yoda at the start, which he missed kind of at the end. What I do, I mean, I don't know what episode it was, but there was one of the episodes where Count Dooku flies off with his ship. Now, playing the Star Wars games is one of the games, Force Awakens, I think it is, or it might have been in 2, where Starkiller pulls the ship down with the Force power.
I almost got that tattooed on me. Yeah, Force Unleashed, yeah.
Obviously, every Jedi has certain limits in power, but why didn't like Anakin? Why isn't he able to kind of hold one of the ships down? And then you see Mace Windu kind of, you know, pick things up and push, you know, the tanks out of the way and stuff like that. You think, the power levels of them all just seems to kind of fluctuate all the time between, you know, maybe who's writing the story at the time.
The writer.
Yeah. Which, I mean, you know, that's the argument always the time in comics when it's like, you know, can Superman beat such and such? And it's like, well, it depends who's writing it and that. But again, I do like the fact we get to see, you know, another Jedi being quite badass and that. The issue I had kind of going into the last episode, because no, that's not part of the Ryloth.
This is the weird thing. So the last episode is called Hostage Crisis, and that's where Cad Bane rescues Zero the Hutt, which we can talk about that.
Oh, right, yeah, because that's not part of the Ryloth one. So, no. Who's that strange green alien that they captured at the end in the Ryloth episode?
Oh, right. Sorry. Sorry. What's Tambor?
What? Right? Because it's like he was his own downfall there, wasn't he? At the end of it all, because he was again trying to, you know, he got told to leave. His droid told him to leave. His droid says the ship's here, we need to leave, and he just kept pushing it, and that just trying to make it kind of a name for himself, thinking he could be the one that kind of take the Jedi's down and that. But yeah, I did like it. I did like we saw Syndulla and that kind of. Maybe this is a bit where it gave the spark for that rebellion to kind of kick in, and that, you know, we see him further down the line in Rebels where he's leading the rebellions and that. So you can see, because I've seen other things, I can see the threads now kind of coming into play, and that. But yeah, again, like I said, it was just nice to see other Jedi's not just getting Obi-Wan and Anakin kind of doing all the heavy lifting. You're seeing lots of different things. Again, you're meeting different clones, which is starting to go right. So there's a 51st Battalion, is it 212?
Yeah, 212 is Obi-Wan's, 501st is Anakin's, because that was the name of Vader's battalion in, not technically the original trilogy, but in the Star Wars Battlefront games back on the PS2, there's like a campaign-ish mode where you play as a clone for Anakin, and then Order 66 happens, and then you play as a stormtrooper for Vader, and it's the 501st, right. And the 501st Legion is the world's biggest Star Wars fan club. They're the ones who provided the stormtrooper outfits for Mandalorian Season 1, because and certain clone trooper ones as well for certain parts, because there were no physical clone trooper outfits ever made. So the 501st Legion, they do lots of stuff for charity and stuff as well. But yeah,
Right. But yeah, it's starting to kind of fill in a lot of them blanks that I didn't know, and that, you know, I know I'm reading the comics, so I'm starting to fill in other blanks as well, and that. But without seeing this, there's a lot of stuff that I thought I knew about Star Wars and realised that I didn't.
Yeah, and I'll say the later seasons, I'd say a loose idea is later seasons, about half of the episodes each season, loosely, are normally Obi-Wan, Anakin, and or Ahsoka centric. Usually, about half of them, maybe 2/3,
which is fine. But
but the rest are about either clones or other Jedi or other. Padme has quite a few random little episodes as well, actually, which vary in quality quite a lot. But I will say, we'll get on to the final episode and then we will start to wrap up. But I will say with Wat Tambor, he's in Attack of the Clones and then he's in Revenge of the Sith. He's head of the Techno Union and he's kind of responsible for a lot of the droids being made, because the Separatist Alliance is comprised of like 4 or 5 big people. One's the banking clan guys, Immune. One's Dooku. One's Wat Tambor. One's Newt Gunray of the Trade Federation. And it's like, so Newt Gunray has got the skinny, long-nosed battle droids, the B1s, but all the better battle droids are essentially made by the Techno Union, which is what Wat Tambor is the leader of, and he's a Skakoan species.
You know, you've mentioned the bank a couple of times.
Yes.
Is that the bank where in Andor they go hit?
No. The banking clan are a group of people who are the Mune species, who are these kind of humanoids, but they're tall. The only way I'd be able to show you without physically showing you a picture is in Attack of the Clones, when Dooku sat at a table and with all the Separatists when Obi-Wan spying on him. One of the characters goes, "The banking clan will sign your treaty," and it's the only live action Mune that has anything to say in all of Star Wars. Yeah. So the last episode, and then we'll wrap up. I'll also say in the Ryloth arc, there's the Ark of the Covenant from Indiana Jones. You see that being loaded onto Wat Tambor's ship. I always look out for it, but I always miss it. But fun little Indiana Jones references, and there are many of them. So final arc and final thoughts. So final episode and final thoughts. Hostage crisis. You got Cad Bane, who people would know from Book of Boba Fett, but also he's quite a major antagonist in a lot of arcs of the Clone Wars. And also with Aurra Sing. Aurra Sing you get to see in Phantom Menace during the pod race, overlooking at one point, which is a fun little bit of trivia. And in this episode, one thing I want to note was Anakin is being very possessive and very manipulative to Padme when he gives you the lightsaber. And he's like, she's like, "I'm doing this thing, it's important." It's like, "More important than our love?" And you're like, what? She's not choosing that over your love. She's just doing something more important than your petty little needs. You fucking dick. Dave, what did you think about Hostage Crisis and that final episode? Any other kind of final thoughts before we sort of wrap up?
Yeah, I felt like it was a bit of a weird one to finish with, but it's interesting that you picked up on something there. I do think that Anakin's behavior was just problematic. He's quite petulant and almost, I would say, more like the live action Anakin, where, like I say, Padme's got a job. She's got a career kind of thing, if you like, and he's just being an absolute knob. But then again, it's like, well, how does no one know that you guys are together? Because you've suddenly got his lightsaber.
Well, Bail's the only one who knows, it seems.
Yeah.
And who does Bail adopt? Leia.
Yeah.
So he's one of the only people who kind of knows about that stuff a little bit.
Yeah, and he seems to turn up a lot, doesn't he? Because for someone who's kind of in the prequels, he's kind of there. I couldn't help but think about residuals and how much money did he actually get for the few little cameos that he had in the prequels. But he's quite an important character, isn't he?
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got the Hutt. Who got he got an appearance, didn't he, in the Clone Wars movie? So he pops up again. I think Bane. I can't work out if I like him or not. I think I could do without the Clint Eastwood sort of look, but there's something kind of cool about him. And what I like is you've got these you've got the Republic and you've got the Separatists and you've got the Emperor, doing the manipulation in the middle. But you've got all these wild cards as well. You've got these people who, excuse me, these people who are not invested in that at all and just making their way in the galaxy. So I did appreciate it for that, to be fair, that it just, again, it broadens the scope a little bit. It makes it, when you have these little side objectives or agendas, if you like, that's what makes it feel more realistic to me. That it's not just everything like that. It's about the rebels, not the rebels, sorry, the Republic versus the Separatists and stuff. Again, I know I must have gone on about this maybe 20 times, but the redone ending to Return the Jedi, when you watch like this and you realize how complicated and realistic it is, you imagine if this galaxy did exist, well, not everyone is for the Separatists, not everyone is for the Republic, and people have it for idealistic needs and other people have it for just purely selfish needs as well. So why at the Return of the Jedi, when the Death Star blows up, is the whole galaxy fucking celebrating? Bullshit.
Yeah, and or evidence is that as well, and loads of the more content of Star Wars you watch, the more that ending makes less and less sense. I think when we first interacted, you said about the ending, and I was like, I don't really see that. I'm not really fussed. But then every time you mention it, I'm like, yeah. I think a couple of years ago,
nonsense.
I was like, you know what? I have to concede. I have to accept that, yes, that is. It's not the worst part of the special editions. The worst part is the Vader note.
Yeah.
But that's my trigger point.
It is, but the fact is, the original was okay.
Yeah.
It was just about a bit of yub nub dancing, and it was a big sort of party, a localized party on Endor. They've just won a battle. They've decapitated all the stormtroopers and playing drums with their heads. It's heartwarming stuff.
Maff, what do you think of the final episode of this series?
I mean, to be fair, at first, I was flagging a bit last night when I watched this. I'm thinking, what's going on?
And the timeline is fucked as well.
Yeah.
And I'll after you've heard from you, I'll explain the timeline a little bit.
I'm thinking, right, okay, so he's trying to get Zero. Okay. Who's hiding? Yeah. And it turns out Zero's hiding him to kind of get him out. So obviously he's either used his ways to kind of get something out there to let Cad Bane to. But I don't know. What you said, Dave, about Anakin, he did kind of have that kind of creepy, well, I'm more important than anything else. And she's like, yeah, but like you say, I've got a job. I've got other responsibilities to do.
It's not like coercive control. It's real problematic.
It comes out worse later on in the seasons. He has a very possessive love over Padme, and that's his folly. Is he doesn't love her for her. He loves her for him. He loves her for how she makes him feel, not the other way around. And that's what kind of makes the cycle.
It is good though, because the certain bits when they've got Anakin there and he goes to talk, and the movie's head down a little bit, and it all looks dark. So you see that kind of dark side too. So this is a bit like, from all you see, like Mace Windu kind of turned him. Padman kind of turned him as well, because she wanted to be with him, but at the same point, she wanted control as well, and he didn't want that. He wanted it all for him.
Let's see if you still think that later on. Let's see what you think about that dynamic and Mace Windu's interactions with Anakin, because there's one interrogation scene that Mace Windu's involved with, and it's dicey. Very, very dicey.
The robot that's in Cad Bane's, is that one of the assassin droids? Yeah, no, it's not. Is he from Mandalorian?
He appeared earlier on, didn't he? The tall assassin droid.
So IG is an IG droid. They're nicknamed assassin droids. IG-88 is obviously the one that everyone knows from Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah.
Mandalorian is IG-11. So they are the same models, but neither of those are IG-88 because IG-88 does appear later
Right.
on, which is a minor spoiler, but they're called assassin droids. I mean, there was even, as Dave pointed out, there was the episode with when they're trying to find R2-D2 and they go to that guy's junk ship, and then they accidentally activate, or Goldie, the baddie droid, activates the assassin droids. That's what they are.
Well, in this, we have that bit where, take my lightsaber, aye. And then he's left without it, and they twig on the fact that, I think, did he take down one of the droids, Anakin, and there was no lightsaber?
Yes.
And she's like, well, he doesn't have his weapon. And like Cad Bane kind of starts looking his down, saying, right, okay, we might be able to take a Jedi down here. But then, it's a typical villain kind of thing of, when you've defeated the hero, and then, it's like Goldfinger goes, oh, Mr. Bond, I'm going to tell you all my plans. No, just kill him. Kill him now whilst he's defenseless. Anakin, he's tied up, he's knocked out on the floor. Kill him now, problem solved. No, we'll just leave him. And then obviously Anakin wakes up just in time to cut a big hole in the floor and save everybody. Again, it's got to be written that way, because otherwise it's going to completely mess the timeline up and that. But yeah, I just felt that this episode kind of, considering it was the last one, and I suppose technically you are on a cliffhanger because Zero got away, but it just didn't feel like it didn't mean anything really, and I don't think that was a way to finish off season 1 of this cartoon.
I think it should have started it. I think this episode should have been the first episode to continue right off the movie. It would have made far more sense.
Liberty of Ryloth as the final episode, and
which feels like a finale.
That. Yeah, because when I was looking at it on the IMDb and thinking, that hostage episode, I'm trying to think how that fitted in.
It doesn't.
To Ryloth, and I thought, no. That's an issue, but it's a bit like if you watch Firefly. It's messed up. If you watch it in the way they released it originally, the order is a complete mess.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch the DVDs now, they've put in the correct order and then watch the film. But this is the same. It's just so. I know you're going to mention something in a bit, but it's just so messed up. Why not kind of get it in the right order, and that have some structure to it.
2 words for you. Why? George Lucas. He is the reason. When Filoni gets full control of Rebels, hey, all the episodes in chronological order make complete coherent sense. I wonder why. Because George Lucas's, at the time of this, I think, ex-wife wasn't there to edit everything he was doing, which is obviously what she did in the original cut. I will say, because we've been chatting for a while, it's starting to get late. I want to mention with the timeline thing, because people who haven't watched Clone Wars, sometimes they try too hard and they go, you know what, I'm going to watch in chronological order. And I say to people, don't fucking bother. I've never done it. It is such, and when you think there's other series that have come out since, that some of them are chronologically before Clone Wars, which makes it even more complicated, the Tales of the Jedi stuff. But in this, so very briefly, Season 2, Episode 16, that's the first chronological thing of the Clone Wars. Then Season 1, Episode 16, okay, which was in this one, which was the Hidden Enemy episode, which was a flashback episode to before the Clone Wars movie. Then you've got a couple episodes of Season 3, a couple episodes of Season 1, and then Season 2, Season 2, Season 2, Season 2, loads from Season 3, which is episodes 5 to 7, then Season 3, Episode 2, then 4, then 8, then the Season 1 finale that we just watched, then Season 3, Episodes 9 to 11, then Season 2, Episode 15, randomly, then the rest of Season 3. That's an abridged version. Then after it's just all of Season 4, all of Season 5, bar one episode, flashbacky one, and then the rest is chronological. And I'm like, who the hell thought of this? It makes no sense. So Hostage Crisis, the one we watched, the final episode, is after all of Season 2, bar one episode, and the first 8 episodes of Series 3. Why? And this is a show aimed at 7-year-olds, to clarify, once again, that it's meant for children. How do you figure that out?
Their attention arc's a bit difficult. We can sit there and go, this is messed up. And again, you answered your question with George Lucas earlier. So he's probably just thrown a load of things at the whiteboard and then gone, yeah, that'll do.
Yeah, it's
for a kid wise, they're just, it's just action on the screen, and that's what they're happy with. That they're not so much kind of thinking, well, episode 1 didn't follow into episode. I should have watched episode 6 and then.
When you see season 2, it'll be different because the problem is all of season 2 is set before the episode we just watched, and it never mentions it.
Right, yeah, but again,
apart from one episode, the set before all of it.
But I'm sat here and watching it and I'm kind of writing things down, reviewing it. It's one of those weird things, beforehand, before watching these Star Wars things and before, going on other podcasts, and you used to watch films, you used to just sit and watch it in that way. Whereas now I do sit there sometimes thinking, well, that's wrong. That's, me and Jax on Back to the Filmography, we kind of redid the script. And then now I can say, well, no, I couldn't write a better one. It says, well, you just did. And it's like, well, yeah, but that's because now I've got different lenses on watching these things.
Yeah.
So I notice it. Whereas before, and if I was to watch Clone Wars, 10 years ago, I may not have noticed that. Whereas now it's like, something's not quite right.
Most of the time, it doesn't make a difference, all that. I was just kind of making a point there. Most of it is quite obvious. But there is 1 or 2 parts of season 2, and I remember watching it the first time, and I was like, where is this? And I had to look it up. Which is, when it doesn't mention it, I just said to Megan, the solution would be, the start of each episode, when you've got the da-da-da going on, all they need to say is, 6 months since the Battle of Christophersis, because that's where the Clone Wars movie happened. If they just said, or shortly after the Battle of Christophersis, or before, if they just said before or after the Battle of Christophersis, it would just be like, okay, is it before or after the movie? But that's me getting aggravated by things. I think that's pretty much everything. So I'll give the baton back to yourselves for final thoughts, and then we will genuinely wrap this up. Dave, is there anything else you wanted to add?
I guess just to comment on the discussion there, it is odd, when you look back and you think about it, because even when so before streaming and all that, where they could have a bit more kind of creative control, you could have spacier seasons, not everything had to be a standalone episode. So when it was all on sort of primetime TV, you'd always have, a standalone episode, but there would be an arc to the season. And it just feels odd. I guess, when they wrote it, the first 4 episodes would have been the movie, wouldn't they? So, and those kind of did flow, apart from the whole Jabba the Hutt bit. And I'm still puzzled by how it finishes. Like we've just discussed there, it just seems odd. And it's just like, yeah, we don't really know what to do with this one. So we'll just put this episode right at the end there. So, I don't need it to be in chronological order either, but I need it to tell a story. So, watching something like Pulp Fiction, complete non-linear storytelling, but it kind of flows and it has an arc. And so, yeah, that's what's definitely missing. But I'll go back to, what I said at the start, really. I think the season is fine. I don't think I could go back, on your recommendation and just cherry pick a few episodes. I mean, they are only bite-sized sort of episodes, aren't they? So, if I go back and watch it again, and I will at some point, but I'll kind of have it on, on the laptop while I'm doing some chores or something like that. And I need to be that completionist really, and go from episode 1 and go all the way through. And even though some of them are just, they don't carry any weight really, they don't have any consequence. But it was a solid start, I think. And again, I know a lot of people don't like it, but I have to say about the sound again. The animation is a bit ropey, some of the stories a bit watery and weak, but the sound is awesome. And again, the more you think about it, those kind of it's obviously like a children's cartoon or animation, and but you got these really deep sort of political themes in there as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. And I'd say I wouldn't recommend you do this, Maff, but if you go on IMDb and you just scroll down all the episodes of seasons 1, 2, 3, 4, and you just look at the average ratings, every season it jumps up by about 0.3 to 0.4 on average. So in season 1, I don't think any of the episodes are rated over an 8, apart from Lair of Grievous and one other one. Whereas in season 2, there's 4, I think. Then season 3, there's 5. And it gets better and better. It definitely does. And I will say just one more final point on this timeline thing, because it does drive me mad. The first 3 episodes in season 2 is an arc featuring Cad Bane as the antagonist, but it's set before the finale of season 1. Could you make it more confusing than that? I don't think you could if you actually tried to.
So that's good to know. So when I start watching season 2, and I go, oh right, okay, what? Because that I suppose when this got released, there was, I don't know, 6 months maybe. How long before the season 2 came out?
It's hard because they do when episodes are being released, they're still making them, so it is a bit of a weird one. But I will say it was a loose plan, I think, because Cad Bane and Anakin know each other in this episode. He goes, oh, Cad Bane, he's like, not Skywalker again. There's some sort of comment. And Megan, when she was watching, she was like, have they met each other before? And I was like, yeah, next season, this arc, that's set before.
According to IMDb, there's 7 months between end of season 1 and start of season 2. But so I suppose if you were to watch it and then go into season 2, you'd be like thinking, did this out? Was it in the kind of the? Whereas I'm going to go from watching it yesterday to probably watching. I'm going to. Unfortunately, at Christmas I got Spider-Man 2, so that completely screwed my plans of trying to watch Star Wars because it's like I want to watch Star Wars, but I want to play a computer. So it was a bit of a mad rush this last week. I think I went through about 10, 12 episodes in the last couple of days.
Wow.
But it is going to be that thing of, he was in the last episode, I'm now going to season 2, but it's from a different time. So it's...
The finale is like basically the last episode we watched, The Hostage Crisis, don't even think about that till like season 3 for some weird... bizarre reason. But I would say with Clone Wars conversations, I will plan after this recording, which I'll wrap up in a sec, we will very, very briefly before we hang up the call, figure out what we're doing for the next episode, whether we want to do all of season 2 again or split it in half. I know season 3 onwards, I think we're splitting in half, but we can figure that out. But I will say, for me and Megan on this, we just found basically watch one episode, basically an episode a day. Just when you've got like, I've got an hour of free time, almost be like, okay, watch Clone Wars first, then the rest of your time in essence.
Yeah, I have a habit though. I think I'll just quickly watch one, and that I watched one of days. I went to pick up George anyway, and like after I thought, right, I've got time, watch one of these and set off. And I kind of got to end and thinking, I want to watch another, but I can't. I've got to go pick the kid up.
and as the seasons go on, there's a lot of these seasons are a lot more arc heavy. So a lot of them are much more of the season, rather than half being arcs and half being like one-off episodes, it's like 2/3 to 3/4 are arcs. So it's just like every 3 episodes is basically a story in itself, which I do prefer. But we made to the end of season 1 of the Clone Wars, the worst season of them all. I still think it's pretty good, but it's still substantially worse than probably all the films, bar maybe Phantom Menace. Hard to tell, but it's got some cool bits. It's got some weaker bits. It's not terrible, but it's all right. But there's going to be a lot more meat to talk about in future seasons. So we will be, as I mentioned earlier, we will definitely be splitting some of the later ones. We'll see about season 2 because there's so much more to talk about in depth. I just kind of want to skate through this season a little bit, but I'm very excited to delve into season 2 personally. So, Dave, we haven't mentioned Rex either or Sarge Ventress, but I'll save them for season 2 so we can kind of compare them loosely and things and anything else we'd forget to mention. But Dave, plug. How tell people where they can find you, all the stuff that you're up to, and if there's any final comments that you didn't get to mention about this, go ahead. The floor is yours, good sir.
When is this coming out?
Sunday. So in a few days.
It is coming out this Sunday. So I'll talk about reality TV first. So Chris is busy trying to kill me with reality TV. So we are covering Traitors season 2 at the moment. So that's only 12 episodes. So 3 episodes a week, runs for 4 weeks. That is great. Towards the end of January, we'll be covering Married at First Sight Australia. And then Chris has sort of forced me into doing Love Island All Stars, which just started this week. We've had a few choice words about that. But we do have loads of other stuff that we want to do as well. We've obviously, you can get me on the VHS Strikes Back. I'm just feverishly trying to see what I could plug that's coming up.
You could plug what you've already released.
So we've just, as we record, we've released Skin Deep. Next week we've got Hairspray coming out. So yeah, that'll
very
be
cool. Because I haven't listened to Skin Deep yet. I'm still listening to the Die Hard one at the moment.
All right, that was good. I had I had a wrong memory of that. That it was quite bad, but actually it's a great movie. But yeah, and we're talking about new projects as well. So we're talking about, okay, what do we do in terms of comics, TV, and movies? And the thing that is probably bubbling up to the top, we really want to do extras. So obviously, Maff, you mentioned about Patrick Stewart, or I think maybe I'd mentioned it, and then you mentioned, he grew up round the corner from you and stuff. And so I think as part of our Back to the Office pod that's been dormant and sat there for a while, we might throw out on that stream as well, the extras.
I love
season
extras.
1 and 2.
I like
it's
extras.
Awesome,
I think extras is Ricky Gervais's best work. I like The Office UK, and it changed the face of comedy. Don't get me wrong. What it did for comedy, can't beat it. But I enjoy extras so much more. Megan's never seen it, and she doesn't like Ricky Gervais. I'm like,
really?
I'm like, you have to see the Daniel Radcliffe episode, and the Orlando Bloom one, and the Patrick Stewart one, and the Ian McKellen one. We'll watch them all. Why not? So I'm very excited if you do that.
It's just if you watch the outtakes as well, because you've got Patrick Stewart, and I mean, he just has such gravitas. The word gravitas was invented for Patrick Stewart, but when he's playing this lechy old man, it's just brilliant. It's just, I've got this idea, and I see this woman, and I really want to see her naked, and all of her clothes fall off.
Is that the whole?
I've seen everything. I love it. But yeah, that's me.
Amazing. And where can people find you online?
So, Seattle Dojo's on X or Twitter. Don't really post that much anymore. Yeah, so more of a lurker. Yeah.
Amazing. Maths, as in Married at First Sight. How are you doing?
Yeah, it's quite amusing that. Listening to Reality Cast and they kind of mention it, it's like, so Dave and Chris are watching me.
Yeah.
A bit weird.
Little do you know.
Yeah. And then all my clothes fell off.
And I've seen everything.
Yeah. Look, it's cold at the moment. I'm like, But I think it would have been the other week. I was on Back to the Filmography with Jack.
Was that Hummingbird?
Hummingbird, yes.
Love
or Redemption, or Crazy Joey, or there was another one. It's got lots of different names, but yeah. And then this, and then again in a month's time, I'm due to be on with Spider Dan, but I think that's March maybe.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember. We haven't sorted anything out for that yet.
No worries. Fantastic. And online, people can find you at
Maff78 on X, Twitter, whatever you want to kind of call it.
Amazing stuff.
Again, I don't really post anything. I retweet every once in a while.
Sorry, I should mention as well. So we do have probably February 1st, I think, coming out with Tony and Max. We've got the mandatory music and CD coming out, and we'll be covering the album by Iron Maiden, Number of the Beast, from 1982.
Right now, I'm literally listening to mandatory music and CD, and I'm listening to your episode on
Alice in Chains Dirt.
No, I've got that on the queue. I haven't been listening as they've been coming out, so I'm trying to listen to a few more that I haven't really caught on to. At the moment, I'm listening to the Sum 41 one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
I'm right at the end. I've literally got 3 minutes left. You guys are giving your plugs. I did a Megan got home and I just didn't quite finish it. So I'm really enjoying that one. So.
And we will have a special guest on our next album review as well.
It's going to be fun stuff, I'm sure. But for me, you can find me at Genuine Chit-Chat on Instagram, X, TikTok, which I don't post on very often, and Facebook. You can go to youtube.com/genuine chit-chat, and you can find all these episodes with video format and stuff. Everything's in a nice little playlist, including some of my conversations with Star Wars authors and Dominic Pace, who's in The Mandalorian, and lots of Star Warsy conversations that are lots of fun. Make sure you check out Rebels Reviewed, where myself, Maff, and Dave tackled all 4 seasons of Star Wars Rebels, and also did a little bonus episode at the end to the lead up to Ahsoka. You can check out all the Ahsoka-centric episodes we did, which was weekly watch-alongs, which I did with Dave and Maff, both respectively joined me on those. So basically all Star Wars content I've essentially tackled. Even me and Dave did a Tales of the Jedi episode years ago, and I feel like we'll probably do a redo of that once we're through all the other animated stuff with Maff, just to get his views on it, because it's a lot of fun there. But yes, make sure you tune in. Make sure you subscribe to the feeds of Comics in Motion and or Star Wars Comics in Canon and or Genuine Chit-Chat, because they're going to be on all these feeds. And you can watch the video version on YouTube, but we're right at the very end. So if you haven't already, you can go watch it again. Have a lot of fun. But I'm really to get on all those feeds because I'm trying to reduce my podcasting output a smidge, so I have more time to do guest spots and read non-Star Wars comics. I try to read stuff that isn't Star Wars because I don't have to. And it's quite refreshing. And obviously get married this year and stuff. So lots of things. But if you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/genuine chit-chat and you get loads of bonus content over there. Little as £1 a month, and you get at least an episode every single week. And Maff likes freaking Megan out by remembering specific details from those episodes and recounting them to her, and she's like, when did I say that? And it's like, oh, well, episode you recorded afterthoughts like 3 months ago that you forgot about, and you made this one random comment that Maff remembers. So all good fun there, and we'll be back in a month's time with the next episode of Clone Wars Conversations. So thank you both for joining me. Thank you for everyone who's listening, and tell us what you thought of Clone Wars Season 1, and if you're rewatching, if you're watching along, I know a few people are. We appreciate all of you, and of course, may the Force be with you.
And with you.
You like leaving it as long as the longest gap possible.
Make it wait for it.